Hello, this is Knitter Matters. I've come in a little moment early just to make sure everything's working. I'm not sure what screen you want me to be on. Okay. That's where I'm meant to be. Sorry about that. Anyway, it's Cheryl Lampard, it's Knitter Matters, and just a little early just to make sure everything's working okay. I was very sorry today to hear about the death of the Japanese designer Issey Miyake, really innovative designer, well known for his pleated creations, fragrances, and for creating the black turtleneck uniform that Steve Jobs wore. So rest in peace, Mr. Miyake. The fashion world will miss you. Now it is 7 o'clock, so let's get started. So welcome to Knitter Matters. This is season 3, episode 11 and part 2 of Sweater Design Basics. Thank you so much for joining me, whether you're watching live or the replay later. Really delighted that you're here. I'm Cheryl Lampard. I'm an image consultant. I'm a fibre artist. I'm a knitting educator. I'm a Craft Yarn Council certified knitting instructor. That's really hard to say. I used to have a yarn store in Brighton, England, and one of the great joys of having a yarn store is that I got to be able to teach people how to knit. I loved doing it then, and I love doing it now. Thank you all for your kind comments and your encouragement about the new way of doing things, switching from laptop to a webcam. You seem to like that better. I do too. I just need to remember to switch the camera at the right point. So again, progress over perfection, but I'm hoping to get it right this week. So let's just do a recap of last week, which was part 1 of Sweater Design Basics. Last week we considered the who, what and how. So the who is the sweater for example. What type of garment? Is it a sweater, a cardigan, whatever? And how it will be worn. Is it an outdoor garment? Is it an everyday thing? Is it just a dressy garment? We also looked at ideas for inspiration, where to find inspiration. We looked at sketching out your ideas to put them in a tangible form, and then we talked about garment ease. I also suggested that you look at and try on some sweaters that you already own, maybe your favourite sweater if you have a favourite sweater. Doesn't matter if it's a hand knit or a purchased one. And I suggested that you take a look at yourself in it and note the things that you liked about it, the fit, the silhouette, all of those things. And also to note the actual measurements when you took it off and laid it flat. And if you did that, that's great. Have those notes handy. If you didn't do it, no matter, you can do it later and then watch the replay as we go along. So today, it's more about the measurements and not just your measurements. Anything that pertains to making your sweater design. And I had a really good question from Jen. That's the only name I have there, Jen. And she asked what appears to be a simple question, but it's actually a really clever one in that sense, because it's not a straightforward answer. And she said that patterns show the bust measurement and the actual size. Which should she choose when she's knitting? And it is a great question, Jen, and I'm going to answer that in a minute. But I need to explain some things first. So the bust or chest size that's of a pattern actually means the body measurement of what it's designed for. So it's measured around the fullest part of the bust. The finished or the actual size is the bust measurement plus garment ease. If you need a refresher on garment ease, please take a look at season 3, episode 11, part 1, which was last week, if you need more information on that. The easiest way to see it is on our YouTube channel. So if I said to you, what's the most important measurement when choosing a pattern size to knit? Well, not unreasonably, you might well say, well, of course, it's the bust size. Well, actually, it's not. The most important measurement is the upper torso or high bust. This is the measurement that you're going to use to determine the bust size that you want to knit. And I'm going to show you how to take that measurement and some other important ones. So I am going to switch cameras. Actually, no, I'm not. because I'm going to get up. You can see on this camera, and I'm going to measure Mabel the mannequin. I'm going to use her as my model. So, let me just make sure that you can see me in shot and what I'm doing. So when we talk about a high bust measurement, remember this would be doing this on yourself, or hopefully you would be doing it having somebody else to help you. It is much easier when you've got somebody else to help you. But I'm going to show you what these measurements, show you where to put the tape really. Doesn't matter at this point what Mabel's measurements are. She's a mannequin, and mannequin measurements aren't necessarily the same as people. So I'm standing at an awkward angle because I want you to see, this is the high bust measurement, okay? It's nice and snug under the arms, it's high up under the arms, and it's not, it's here, above the breast tissue. And if I just swing her around a bit, you can see that it's nice and straight across the back, and it's snug. It's not tight, it's snug. So you want to make a note of that measurement. Whoops, Mabel is wobbling a little bit here on my floor. Okay, so that's our upper torso, that's our high bust measurement. The next one I'm going to do is the full bust. You do want that measurement too, and that's at the fullest point of the bust. So I'm looking at the screen, trying to see where. So that's going to be the fullest point of the bust. Make a note of that measurement too. The next one I'm going to do is a cross chest, and it's just on the front only, and you want to do it from where the crease in your armhole is. Hang on, let me just look round to get my bearings. Okay. You want to do where the crease, I'm going to go the other way around with this tape measure. It is upside down, but it's easier for me to handle because I've got Mabel's arm this side. So it's going to be sort of the crease, armpit crease to armpit crease really. Take a note of that measurement. Then we want a cross back measurement. This measurement is from shoulder bone to shoulder bone. Okay, so imagine that's where my fingers are. You can see here that's where her arm starts, if you will, and clearly there's no arm on this side. Shoulder bone to shoulder bone. So it includes the neck measurement. It's both shoulder blades plus, right across here, okay? Take a note of that. You also want to take the armhole depth. And if you need a note of these measurements, again, I'll publish them tomorrow on Little Matters page, which measurements that I took and how to do it. So what you want to do for your armhole depth, let me go this side where she's got her arm. It's actually from the point of the shoulder. You're going to take it from the back. It's from the point of the shoulder straight down in a straight line from the top of the shoulder to approximately 1 to 2 inches below the armpit level. So if this is somebody's armpit, you're going to go 1 to 2 inches down. Can't quite see because I'm trying to keep out the way so you can see what I'm doing. So armpit plus 1 or 2 inches. The other measurement that's worth taking is also your bicep measurement, and that's really straight round the fullest part of your arm. If your arm is a bit thicker lower down, take that measurement, but bicep is usually the fullest part of the arm. And when you don't have to do a Popeye movement, just make sure your arm is sort of flexed a little, okay? So, the measurements we took: high bust, full bust, cross chest in the front, cross back, the arm is about to fall off, the armhole depth and bicep. I'm going to sit back down now. Thank you, Mabel, for loaning us your measurements. Okay. Now, so why are these measurements the most crucial? The reason is because having a garment that fits at the shoulders is the key to a well-fitting garment, particularly if it has set-in sleeves. You want it to fit well at the shoulders. Everything else follows. If it fits well here, then the neck is going to fit well, the sleeve, the armhole is going to be in the right place. And the truth is that most knitters, when they're choosing a pattern, they pick a size that's too big for them. Sometimes it can be too small, but in most cases they pick a size that's actually too big for them. And what we need to do is select the size that's nearest to the high bust measurement. I'm going to switch to the worktop now, and I'm going to just sort of go through those measurements. So, for example, okay. So, for example, let's say my high bust measurement is, let me make sure you can see what I'm writing. So let's say my high bust measurement is 36 inches and my full bust is 40 inches. There's a difference, therefore, between those two of 4 inches. Let me move that down so you can see. There we go, 4 inches. Now, if I knit the size 40 inch, which would be my full bust measurement, if I knit the 40 inch, I've got to assume that unless I know for sure the ease, but let's assume that standard ease on a sort of, a standard fitting garment, there's going to be an ease of 2 to 4 inches. So my finished size would therefore be anything between 42 to 44 inches. Okay. Now that doesn't actually sound too bad, but actually the only place it's going to fit me is at the bust line, because everything else is going to be bigger than I want it to be. It's going to be too big anywhere else, including the neckline and the shoulders, because I'm actually knitting for a bigger size than I am. And that in turn, those things, the neckline and the shoulders, that's going to actually affect the armhole. That's going to affect the armhole as well. My better option would be to knit for the 36 inch bust, which is my high bust measurement, and make adjustments elsewhere. So let me come back and then I can talk to you. So taking the high bust measurement is much more helpful in choosing your size to knit, because this part of the torso doesn't have lots of flesh. Areas of flesh can increase, breast tissue can increase, our arms can increase or decrease, of course, but bones, skeletal measurements don't change. I am a different size now to when I was in my 20s. But my bone structure hasn't changed. My shoulder dimensions, the width of my shoulders, is the same as it was when I was in my 20s. This measurement is the same. My skeleton is the same. My bone structure is the same. So this borrow somebody else's teeth. This measurement is much more realistic, because this is sort of bone structure. You haven't got much flesh here, whereas anywhere else we may have more flesh. So that's kind of just skewing the measurement. So if I were to knit for, a 40 bust, I don't need that up here. I need the 36 up here, not the 40. And I can make adjustments and make changes to where I need it to fit as I go along. It's much easier than trying to alter all of this. If you buy a jacket and take it that's too big, and you take it to a tailor's and ask them to alter the shoulders, alter the neckline, alter the lapel, they're not going to do it, actually, because it's such a big job, and you fundamentally alter the whole look of the garment. You're not going to get a good result. With a jacket, you have to make it fit on the shoulders. Buy the jacket to fit the shoulders, you can change everything else. So, if the shoulders and the neckline fit, it's much easier to make the adjustments to the other areas, whether you're making them smaller or increasing them. So the cross back, the armhole depth, and the upper arm measurements all affect the sleeve cap. And those things are much harder to adjust. So the bust measurement just isn't the be all and end all, although, patterns do show that. And the truth is, patterns have to be designed somehow, in terms of there has to be a starting point. For commercial patterns, there has to be a starting point. Whoops. So back to Jen's question. Patterns show the bust measurement and the actual measurement, which to choose. So again, Jen, the answer that I'm going to give you is choose the bust size that's closest to your high bust measurement. Now, as well as being a certified knitting educator, I'm also a certified palm and pletch sewing instructor. And when I teach their pattern fitting system, students pick their pattern size based on their high bust measurement. And it works pretty much every time. It's a much more accurate sort of depiction of the size that you need. So we can apply that principle to our knitting. So let's talk about if last week you tried on your sweaters and found your favourite in terms of fit. Now you can use that to base your sweater design on. And I suggest then that you make a schematic of the measurements. Let me move this out the way just a second. And for those of you that don't know what a schematic is, I'll need that in a second. I'm going to show you this. I'm bringing over and I'm going to change screens. I'm learning how to do this. Okay, let's get in the right place. This is I've talked about this book before. I love it. It's my Vogue Knitting Ultimate Knitting book. Really handy book. It's a real sort of Bible. It's very useful for lots of things, and I refer to it a lot. There's something that I will point out in here in a minute that I'm not so keen on, but this is a schematic, a basic schematic, and what that shows you is all good patterns have a schematic, and they are so useful because it gives you the actual finished measurements of the garment, and typically it's going to look like this, and there's the different sizes along here. It'll usually give you half a front, because assuming that both fronts, side front's going to be the same. If it's a sweater, it might give you the full front, but nevertheless the measurements are all there. It gives you length and all of those good things. So there's a sleeve again, all of those things. So you can make a schematic of the measurements of your sweater. And you might say, well, it's actually quite a boxy sweater. That's just fine. What you want to do is take the measurements that are sort of from seam to seam, if you will, at the shoulder, the armhole depth. You can measure that quite easily on a sweater. The length from the armhole to the bottom, all of those things, the sleeve, all of those dimensions. So, that could be your basis for your sweater design. And always check that cross-back and armhole depth measurement on your sweater and check against the schematic. So if you don't have that, find a good sweater pattern, one with a schematic. I always recommend patterns that have got a schematic. It makes life so much easier, especially when you're trying to design or adjust a sweater. So if you don't have a favorite sweater, then try and find a pattern, a good sweater pattern, one with a schematic, where the measurements match as much as possible your sweater, and use that as your template. So if you don't have a favorite existing sweater or a favorite sweater pattern, be really diligent about taking your own body measurements and find a pattern that has similar dimensions, and then you can kind of build a schematic from there if you need to. So, and I would suggest that for a first sweater design project, I would recommend basing that on an existing sweater pattern. There's a lot involved in designing a sweater from scratch, so a template to base on your first one is a really good way to go. And if you have hopefully you'll have a lot of success with that, then you can venture out and start to do it from scratch. But it will give you the confidence to go further and develop those skills. So today, the last thing today, we're going to talk a bit about sleeve width. This is another important measurement. While I've got this book open here, I did want to mention this. So there is a very helpful bit in this book called Body Measurements. And this, if you have the book, it's great. It'll show you the measurements to take. Very helpful. The only thing I would dispute is that it says that the bust and chest measurement are the most important measurements. Well, I disagree with that. It is the high bust that's the most important. But bear in mind that, you know, we're talking about refinements. We're talking about trying to refine things. And if a pattern had to explain all that, it would actually be quite complicated. Designers have limited amount of space to put their patterns in, and you know, sometimes an extra page, that's a lot of extra cost to a pattern company. So they have to often refine it and get it right down. And you know, we're used to seeing bust measurements. People kind of figure it out from there, but I do disagree with that. The other useful thing, if you happen to have this book, there is a design, sort of a whole design worksheet, the book that you could use, or you can make up your own. But it's super helpful because you'd have all your measurements there. And if you're the sort of person that likes things to be organized like I do, you could make your own version of this and then keep that as in your sort of project folder. But then all the information is there to hand, including the schematic that you could work out. Okay, so let me move that out of the way, and then let me talk a little bit about sleeves. So this one comes up a lot actually, and I was inspired to talk about this after helping Mariah with her sweater the other day. But this one comes up a lot. So if you need to make your sleeve a little bit wider, where do you make the increases? Well, kind of your first instinct might be to just add stitches to the sides as you go up. So you'd add a few stitches here, and I've got to move across the camera here a bit, and then you'd add a few here. So these are your extra stitches along here. But the problem with that now, you've actually increased the size of the sleeve cap, and it won't necessarily fit into the armhole of your sweater now. The length, and when we say length, we're talking about all around this curve. This is a set-in sleeve, and that's a typical shape for a set-in sleeve. The length of the sleeve cap and the armhole that it's going to go in need to be equal to ensure a good fit. Yes, you can sort of smooch in a couple of extra stitches. You can do that. But if you're talking about sort of an inch worth of stitches, that could be problematic. A couple either side, yes. But anything more than that is going to be problematic. So rather than add extra to the sides, you could make the increases in the center of the stitch. So you could start increasing out from here, you know, wherever you, so it's at the fullest point. You could start increasing a few stitches here. Now that's going to increase your width, but it's not going to alter this. Not in the same way. It's not going to lengthen that. You're just going to add this here. And you might even, because you're not going to need that up here, it's almost like you're creating a dart. You could do this with increases and decreases or short rows, but you're adding here because this is where you want the width. Okay, this is where you want it. So you could be adding your stitches here, and then you don't necessarily want them on the top of your shoulder. If you do, that's a different alteration. But you don't necessarily, if you just want it at the width, at the bicep, you could add some stitches here, and then, sorry, my ruler dropped off the desk, and then decrease them. Or you could make sort of smaller increases, maybe there, somewhere like that. And certainly if it's a pattern, if it's a stitch pattern, you could do that without it being noticed. If it's a two-color pattern, if it's a sort of fair isle type design, you'd have to rethink that because it's going to interrupt the pattern. But those are ways that you can increase. It's what we call, and again I refer to Palmer Pletch with the pattern fitting system. It's called slash and spread. We would actually cut the paper pattern down that way and that way and that way and that way, and move it out and put another inset in. So there's more ways than one to add or decrease in a sleeve. And this would be my recommendation if you have, say, you just need to increase it by an inch or decrease it. Again, reverse the process, you're going to be decreasing it. If it's any more than an inch, bigger changes need to be made both to the sleeve and the sleeve head. So that's a whole other thing, but you know, that may be helpful to you. If it's just a little bit, half an inch to an inch, you could easily do that with. So I know that's a lot. I haven't gone into anything about gauge or how to check gauge or make gauge samples and the fibers that you're going to use for you know, creating a sweater. Maybe we'll do that next week. Maybe we'll have a part 3 to this. Anyway, let me come back to this rather awkward drawing here. Let me come back to full screen. So I really hope you found that helpful. It is only a snapshot because it is a big subject, designing a sweater, and there's lots of elements to consider. But I hope it's been helpful, and I hope it's whet your appetite to have a go at designing your own sweater or adjusting one. Or at the very least giving you the confidence to make changes to an existing sweater pattern. As always, this episode and all others are uploaded to our Facebook page afterwards and the Knit Matters YouTube channel, so you can watch the replay later. We upload them within 24 hours, and if you're searching for this one later, it's Season 3, Episode 11, Part 2. Hope you enjoyed it. In the meantime, see you next time, but in the meantime, keep well, keep calm, and keep knitting. Bye for now.